maybe that was me.
Okay.
It's after the top of the hour. Let's dive in. Yes. Hi, Krista.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you.
Um, I think you had some questions about migrating from OCLC's WMS to Koha.
Yes. Well, just to give a little background, also one of my colleagues who works at Butler University, she's in our consortium, should be here soon too in the meeting. Her name's Lisa. Um, yeah, I'm the cataloging consultant for Palmy, as I mentioned, and yeah, a lot of people from our consortium had questions about Koha, different things, and so they were like, "Hey, can you find these answers?" Some of the answers I think we won't necessarily find until we actually uh, I don't know, get more into it and actually start working with the uh, the group or the Equinox. So, yeah.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
There was some discussion for those who are not on the Google group cataloging list for our group. The Koha stores record numbers in various places because we migrated from well, our records had been in kind of a vamped
Hmm.
DBase. Then they were in a tiny little catalog system that's marketed to school libraries called Athena. We have various record numbers. Many of them are in the 035 field, which is, where you can put any kind of system record number you want. And then our 001 has some Athena numbers, some Koha record numbers, and then for our new records we've imported to OCLC, it has OCLC record numbers. And when you're doing an import of records into Koha, John posted wonderful screenshots. You can set where you'd like it to overlay and what numbers you can use. It's very flexible that way. And for those of you who don't have access to the Google group, you can send an email to info@koha-us.org to ask to be added to our cataloging Google group. And then if you log into the Google group, you can see the archived messages and see the wonderful screenshots. What I don't know, since I'm not in a consortium and I'm not familiar with consortiums, is who's doing what record import? Do they have access to the settings? I'm going to throw out there that koha-US also has a consortium SIG. So it might be good to go there and ask that group too. So do people have comments, suggestions? Any WMS users?
My information is for a different system and very outdated because I migrated our library myself unsupported from Horizon in 2013. The only thing I would suggest you really pay attention to is the 942 field, which is COA specific, I believe. And that gives the default item type and the cataloging scheme. Um, let's see. Every time I try to edit a record that came from the old system and try to save it, Koa complains and said, no, you have to fill in this field. It really doesn't matter because if you transfer the item record to 952, the item record is also attached to the item. And we were already using the 060 field because I'm in a medical library. We use NLM. And one of things that Heather keeps saying, quite correctly, is if you get something wrong, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't matter. It's not going to face it. It's not going to be a crisis. You can probably fix it. If you can't, you can probably get along without it. How many records do you have? We had something like 20,000.
Oh, that's a good question. We've got, since we're doing this as a consortium, it's going to be millions, or I don't know. Like, let's just put it this way, it's going to be a lot. So, and also we're going through a transitional stage, so there's not going to be a cataloging consultant for a time to kind of like, you know, work on, yeah, like when there's records, maybe they have an issue across the consortium or whatever. And we don't have a lot of catalogers in our consortium. So yeah, we're working on all those kind of, yeah, again, what to be aware of, who's kind of going to monitor that will have to be determined. But yeah, thank you. That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah, I think that in response to Heather's comment, the 999 fields are assigned when COA is importing. So I haven't done a consortium either. However, I do know of a cataloger, a really magnificent cataloger who's retiring soon, might be amenable to stepping in as a consultant. I'm not going to name any names here.
We're here for you, Krista. Yes, there are many catalogers in koha-US, in the Koha community. You are aware of our cataloging Google group. I would also suggest, I'm sorry, I've had a really, really busy time. Are you on the Koha Mattermost chat? There's a cataloging channel.
I don't think so. I think I'm just in the group. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Thank you, John. The link to the Koha Mattermost chat's been put in, and there's a way to browse for the different channels. And there's a particular cataloging channel, and if you're new and you're not sure where to post something, everyone's sort of automatically put in the town square. You can always ask questions in the town square.
And one of the things I love most about Koa is all the users are, okay, it's not really a cult, but we are pretty passionate, and we are absolutely willing to help. I could not have gotten where I am without the assistance of a lot of people. I started out, over 10 years ago. I had no idea what I was doing. Now I sort of know what I'm doing. But our circulation is maybe high 2 figures a month. No, that's not that much. We're a very small medical library. So my model would not work for, let's say, a consortium. But ask and someone will try to help you.
And did I hear, Krista, that you'll be working with Equinox?
At this point, I think that's the plan. again, things are still kind of not quite settled. We looked at different systems and that kind of thing. So one thing that, and I appreciate what Fred said and others about the koha group being very like open and working together and that kind of thing, because one thing about having WMS that we like as catalogers, I'll speak for Lisa and myself, is that since we're really the only one, we have 24, 25 small private colleges in our consortium, and there's really only 2 of us that are full-time catalogers. So one thing we like about it is that, a lot of things are really streamlined. Everything is tied to the OCLC number. That's kind of why someone was asking this question about, because you just send your OCLC number. Everything like even the way we do our resource sharing amongst each other, everything is like in the system, right? It works. We're so used to thinking a certain way that we have to kind of unthink, like unlearn, and kind of think about all the different, especially when it comes to cataloging and our records, like all the different things, like the details and things that we're going to have to like adjust, like how we're doing our authorities. That was our big one, because we just don't have the people to maintain that, right? Or so it's really, it's very helpful to be able to like ask questions. And sometimes it's like I don't even know exactly the question to ask. As I said, we got a lot of questions from just different people within the consortium, and it's like some of those I'm like, I don't think we can answer that quite yet. So even just having the conversation, it's making me think like, oh yeah, think about that too. One of the things I was wondering, and I mean, this might be just WMS specific going into koha, and it's something that Fred sort of brought up. It's oh, the default item type and cataloging scheme. Some of our records in WMS, I realized, at least for my specific institution, I work for Anderson University, and we were trying to run a report, and I don't remember, I wasn't running the report, but it was something about, you don't have any cataloging scheme in your item records for like most of your records in here at Anderson. So I was thinking, I wonder if that's going to be a problem later, because we just, it's not specific. It doesn't say, okay, Library of Congress or whatever. It just was never like set in a lot of our records. So that's something I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be a problem. So doing this migration it's like, because we have so many institutions and they have different ways things have been cataloged over the years, different thing. It's like I'm a little bit concerned about our data and how it's going to go over, because even just from my university alone, I see all the inconsistencies. So,
I see a lot of us nodding. A lot of us have been in that situation, and I'd like to totally reassure you, koha is very, very, very forgiving.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it pretty much doesn't care if it's an RDA record, an old ISBD record. I think all the records really need to have is a 245 field for a title.
Mm.
Yeah. it's upon import, it's gonna assign that Koha bibliographic record number and store it in a 999 subfield C. I'm 99% sure that's the field. And I depend on you all to correct me. Okay, good. You're nodding. Yeah, great. Oh, I'm causing some feedback here. I'm not hearing it. Sorry. I can try a headset. I think the only thing you really, really need to have set on your system levels is pretty much whether it's Mark 21 or or Unimark. Okay, can you hear me? Is this better? All right, I see some nodding. So, and another thing you could do is there are many demo systems out there. I think Equinox probably has one. I know Bywater has one. You can, and these are fully functional Koha systems and with a login, and you can completely mess around in them and everything will be reset before the next day. You can go ahead and try to import 20,000 records if you want. You can change the system settings and really get in there and explore. And the other tool that I would recommend exploring if you're not aware of it is Mark Edit. It's free software. Okay, you're nodding. You're aware of Mark Edit? Okay, excellent. Um, does anybody else have any general suggestions?
I'll just chime in as a consortium member, consortial representative. It is really forgiving, like they're saying, and we migrate libraries in we've a couple a year. Like I'm migrating a community college. We're largely public, so we've got 51 libraries now, and two of them are community colleges. So we're not really comparable to your situation. We're largely Dewey, but like that cataloging scheme stuff is it's sort of on the side in Koha. It feels like you put it in the item field as Dewey or Library of Congress, but then your call number field is separate. So like it's and that can be populated in batches. Like if your data is missing one of those data points and it's all the same thing, your vendor should be able to just insert those fields for you en masse in like at the database level. So yeah, migrations are always fun because it's always like I shouldn't say this. We say this privately, garbage in, garbage out. So like there's always going to be bad records and there's always going to be cleanup. The way that we're organized, we manage the consortium at the system level here. We have regional systems in Kansas. So we have a cataloging department that sort of monitors things, but all of our libraries, all of our member libraries, most of which are not librarians. They're part-timers, they're retired people. The libraries aren't open very many hours. They're all doing their own cataloging, and we're largely copy cataloging. So they're using Z targets rather than doing imports for the most part, which works for us. We like I said, we monitor things coming in, but for the most part, we're attaching items to records that already exist, so they don't have to know much about Mark at all. They just have to fill out a form. So I feel like cataloging in Koha is very friendly to the non-cataloger.
I just wanted to add that every library has bad cataloging or inconsistent cataloging, or and I've worked with consortiums that are merging records from different platforms into Koha. And the nice thing about Koha is that it has, I think, and I have used other systems, so it's not my completely biased opinion, but Koha has some, I think, superior catalog editing tools. So you have mark modification templates, you have batch editing tools, and it also, Koha gives you access to superior reporting because you can write your own SQL reports. And so you can identify those cataloging problems. I would say that authority management is pretty good in Koha. There's some improvements that could probably still happen there, but it's still better than other systems that I've used as far as your ability to do batch changes and that kind of thing. So whatever comes in as your consortium comes together into one Koha catalog, there will be some cleanup work, but Koha gives you the tools to deal with it. Yeah. So I hope that gives you a little more confidence and, or maybe feel a little more comfortable with the idea of Koha.
Well, I would like to second what Jason said. Cataloging is really fairly easy and intuitive. I could figure it out, and when I started using Koha, I had taken the cataloging class about 30 years before, and I think I forgot pretty much all of it. Another nice thing is that Koha is infinitely configurable, and I have an English degree, and I used to be an editor. I am kind of picky about about my words. Infinitely is actually literally true. Literally, not figuratively, literally. Oh, and I'm going to put another link in chat, which I find extremely useful, which you probably already know. Mark 21 format for bibliographic data from Library of Congress.
And I guess the good thing about working with a support provider is they've done they've done this all before, and they normally have a process that they'll go through with you about how they'll, most have a few stages. They'll do an initial look at your import of your records and go through an iterative process to refine it, working with your data and what you're going to clean up and what you're not going to clean up and things like that. So you're in pretty good hands when you're with most support providers. So I think that's a good thing. The other thing, and I'm not a cataloger, so is to, you're, because it's a consortium, and all consortiums probably work differently, you probably have to agree on some rules about how you're going to catalog and what's important and what's not, and some of your conventions, I guess, which would be the same as with any system. But yeah, so anyway, that would be just be my thought. And there might be some compromises along the way.
I'd add that sharing bibliographic records, getting everybody comfortable if you're going to have one bibliographic record and many libraries having items. From processes I've been involved with and that I've seen, you're going to need a lot of snacks, a lot of brownies, a lot of popcorn.
Yeah, so that's the one. Okay, so again, I've worked with a lot of different systems before I went to WMS. And that was the thing. So with WMS, what we do now is like we each have our own, every institution has its own instance, but we share resources and all of that, right? So all we're doing, if we're not doing original cataloging, we're just going in, picking that record. We add local bib data, we add our item. We just can't change that master record, right? Like, anyway, so we haven't had to think about all of that. So, and I'm pretty sure we're, sorry, that's fire trucks. I'm pretty sure we are going to be all on one instance. I think that is my understanding. And I know there was something about how we have to like decide what, I think it's the item types or something. Like we have to make we're going to be having a task force that's going to be doing that. So I think that was one of my concerns about going, and not just mine. I think I can speak for my colleague Lisa here, is that we're all going to be, and maybe this is a question I can ask. Okay, so if we're all sharing one instance, we're all using the same record, have our items attached. Each, let's say there's like 6 libraries that have the same, we're using the same record, we're using the same. We each have, maybe we might each have different call numbers for whatever reason. But the other thing is, we also, here at Anderson University, for example, we might have 3 copies of the same book, but one is in a special collection, one is in archives, and one is in our stacks. And we have, for Anderson alone, we'll have a note in our local bib data that says, archives copy signed by this Church of God minister, for example, or stacks copy, blah, blah, blah. So now, and then let's say Butler has that same book, Butler University has the same book. It's like, okay, so they have a different call number. They don't have all those notes. I don't know, does that all go over into Koha, or like, that is one of my concerns.
I can speak to this a little bit because we had that when we were first coming up. Like, you're used to putting your notes in the 500 fields, which is at the record level. Those we just moved on to a public note or a private note in the item. So it's definitely possible to map your stuff down to the item level out of the record level. That's something your vendors should be able to help accommodate. But you'll definitely want them to pay attention to that.
So just to clarify, because in WMS, we have the master record we can't touch, really. We can't add 500s directly into the master record. There's this other section. It's a local bib data. And yeah, we have limited fields we can use, like a 500, 500s. I think we can add like 650s, 700s. That's really about it. And then, and then the item. So that still would be something that we'd be able to do?
Yes, there's another way to do this in the bib record if you want. You can use mark edit, or have your vendor do it. You can either have 500s with a subfield 5 about the institution to which it applies, or you can use 590s and append some readable data to it. So you can have say you've got a 500 that says Anderson University archives copy signed by the author. It's probably right now it just says 500 archives copy signed by the author. You can then use mark edit or have Equinox or another vendor help you append into your records, looking at where your item is, Anderson University archives copy signed by the author. They can append that at the beginning of the subfield A in the 500, and then they can append also a subfield 5, Anderson University, something like that. In OCLC, the subfield 5 carries your NUC symbol, but it's flexible. It can be iReadable. So your consortium will make the decision. Are you going to maintain this stuff in the bib record and you're going to have a lot of notes then for everybody? Or do you want to just put it in the item record for the particular item saying signed by the author?
Okay. So
Also,
as long as I know that we know it's doable, that we're not going to lose. Because it also, well, and I don't know how this is going to work when we do our sharing between one another too. That's another thing. But right now, however it's set up and however it works, there's certain things we can't, it's like, yeah, Butler University can get something from us from our stacks, but not our archives. right? Or not. Our other special collection. It's the same title, but yeah, the different items. So
Yeah,
those
you can
matter. Yeah.
you can make the archive one different item type, and just set that one up as not for loan. Also, this may have come up already. Uh, if the main record and the call number for the main record and the call number for the item can be completely different things.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if you have, if you put a nursing research book in WY for one using NLM 060, and you can also have no 50.
So every institution can have their own call number, essentially, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It might make the catalogers clutch their pearls, but
No, I
and
mean, that's the way it is in OCLC too. The different call number systems are carried in the different mark fields, and Koha is incredibly flexible because it's completely happy then with whatever call number is in the item record. And when you're doing call number browses and call number searches, it's really loving those item record call numbers. And another thing that makes it super flexible and super good is that the not for loan status is completely it is a separate field in the item record from the item type. So you
forgot
can
that.
you can set various item types to be default not for loan.
Oh,
You
okay.
can
Yeah.
you cannot set locations to be not for loan. And I'd love to see if there's a bug for that. I haven't looked. So for example, our default status book is loanable. It circulates. So every time I catalog something into our rare collection, I have to remember to set the status to not for loan if it's a book.
Okay. Okay.
And
So you have to manually set it.
In our setting, because that's the way we've set up our item types. Now, you can have an item type that's a rare book. And then those could all be, yes, Micah's nodding. Then those could all, that item type can be set to not for loan status. So you could have, your little code could be like AURBK for Anderson University Rare Book, and all those are not for loan no matter who asks. It's how you set up your item types, which is very flexible.
I think I probably migrated the most recently out of everyone here. And I will say that one of the things you try to do is you try to plan ahead, and sometimes facts resist that because things come up in the moment and you can't prepare. So I understand. I'm very much in the same position you were in. I was in the position a while ago. But I will also say that this is a good thing to kind of consolidate your item types. So we went from having way too many item types that were way too many local rules for, and I'm in a two library situation, which are two separate seminaries. And we consolidated down into I think I'm looking at it right now. At the time of launch, we had 12 different item types. So we have book, non-circ book. We have reserve item. We have a long reserve, short reserve. We kept it really simple, and that makes it easier. And then one thing you can do, depending on what discussions you have, is you can put local limitations on things. So you can have the default loan period for a book be one thing, but then you can also, within a particular library, decide you want the loan period to be different, longer, shorter, whatever. We were basically advised by our support provider to not do that if we could avoid it, just keep it as simple as possible. So that's why we went with like non-circ book, because we used to have we had a non-circulating book, we had a reference book, we had a rare book, and we're like, we don't need all that because the whole point of the item type was to say this item should not circulate. So we just made it non-circ. And then you also have other fields you can use, like the shelving location, which is necessary. But then you have like the collection, which is not necessary. So if you have a collection that might be in a shelving location, so like in our reference room, our reading room, we have like 3 different collections in there. We can put that information in the collection note. It's more of just for information. It's not going to affect whether or not the item loans a certain way or what have you. So um, there's a lot of things you can do, and sometimes the collection and the shelving location are almost competing for what's more important. But um, as far as koha is concerned, the shelving location is the more important thing. But then there will also be a library, so you can have a library. Within the library, you have shelving locations, and then you can have call numbers, and the call numbers don't have to match. We have instances here where we have commentaries in the reading room shelved as a set, but then in the stacks, they're shelved with the book of the Bible. So you have a lot of flexibility. So I wouldn't stress that koha would be unable to handle your situation. If that makes you feel any better, I hope it does.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's good to know. I think we sort of talked about this when we were doing the sandbox with koha and all that. And yeah, because one of our things right now is, all of our CERC policies, a lot of them, it's like, it's shelving location, right? It's like, this is archives, or like within Anderson alone. So even, how I want to say this, within each of our Paladin institutions, the 20 of them, we have in each institution branches, even though it's in our library. So we have archives as a branch, we have special collections as a branch, and we have the regular collection as one. And then within each one of those, we have our shelving locations. And so, so our shelving locations, a lot is tied to that. For example, I was talking about this with someone the other day because I was like, oh, I don't know how that's going to work. So our reference collection, the way it's cataloged right now, we have in the system, we just have the call number, LC call number, right? We don't put REF in front of it. We just have it as it's called because everything relies on that shelving location. So, yeah.
Koha's gonna handle it similarly. In the item record, the call number is gonna be in a 952 subfield 0, and the shelving location is gonna be in a subfield Y. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks.
B.
And then there's gonna be a library.
Yeah, David put a screenshot of the item add form, and it's got all the little subfields next to each of the fields there.
Yes.
And I just want to second what Juliet said in the chat. Like, as a person who administers a relatively large consortium, the lower number, especially of item types and patron types, you can narrow it to, the more sanity your administrator is going to have, because that's what the CircFind rules go off of. And if you're going to start doing individual CircFind rules for libraries, it turns into a big nightmare fast. Like, it exponentially increases the number of rules you have based on the number of item type, patron type combinations you have. So fewer of those as possible. At one point we had like 1,200 shelving locations because we had shelving locations for each individual library. Don't recommend that either. If you can come down to like a list of shelving locations that everybody can share and collection codes too, it sounds like maybe your branches would be good candidates for collection codes. So your archives collections, your reference collection, and then like you could granulate it out with the shelving locations. That's sort of how we handle it here. We do like adult books is the collection, and then fiction is the shelving location, and then the item type is just book. So yeah, the lower you can keep those sort of those authorized value categories, lower counts on those, the easier your life is going to be in the long run.
Yeah, we only are a one library setup, and I'm totally nodding because it's not only going to be helpful in the system administration aspect, but it's going to be helpful when you're troubleshooting problems because of fewer variables. It's also going to be so much easier when someone asks for a report for something because you won't have to be figuring in so many things into writing your report.
One thing I could think of too that I had to recently go through is, and I don't know your situation with your consortium, but if you have historically treated all faculty the same, no matter which college they're a part of, or all students the same or not, um, that is something to maybe start thinking about early, because you're going to change. Like, if, for example, you might have treated one college might treat graduate students one way, or faculty one way. If you can harmonize those across all of the institutions, that makes your life so much simpler. And in our context, some of that had to be approved by a faculty vote. So like, get that higher ed governance structure kind of, that's one thing to think about.
And I'd also add from the migrations I've been through and when policies have changed, publicize, 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 and put as positive a spin on it as you can. Yes, Micah, migrations are a great opportunity to revise policies.
Yeah, we became much more generous at this time across the board, and we also took it as an opportunity to get rid of late fees. So it was all kinds of positive stuff, and so it was an easy pill to swallow for people.
We found too that a cute name and a cute logo mascot really helped. We went with a dog who is named Keys, who got the name Keys because the dog started hanging out at the shipyard and someone had dropped their keys and the doggy just went and got them and brought them back. So everybody at the shipyard named the dog Keys and loved Keys. So that can be a fun opportunity. Some places have naming contests and logo contests. Yeah, have as much fun with it as you can. Does anybody else have any tips, tricks, hints? Yes, Avenging Chicken online. The Avenging Chicken is one of our favorite mascots and members of the Koha community.
Are you going to be implementing a discovery system at the same time? Or if you're in WMS, that's your discovery system right now, but are you going to just use the Koha OPAC? And
Well, some institutions might be using one, like EDS or something, and then others might use something else because it just really depends. Each of our institutions, like we have some that are way bigger than others, right? And we got some institutions where it's like a one person gig, and then others where. So it just kind of depends on what their needs are going to be, and that's another thing we got to investigate.
we have two different EDS systems drawing from our Koha. It's working very well. So there's an open archives initiative protocol for metadata harvesting. There's a bunch of settings that work very well with that. So
I'll also throw out there Aspen's really popular.
Just a quick question. Does anyone know, like, I know this is being recorded, correct? Is the chat also, like, or it'll be in there, right? Okay. Because
Yes. The chat is usually
back later.
Yes, the chat's also usually posted along with a video, but also anybody can capture the chat. I believe.
They move the dots to the top of the chat window.
Yeah, it
So
took
up
me
at
a
the
while to
top, there's
find it,
some
but
dots, and then under that says save chat, and it'll save it to your local computer as like a
yeah.
text file.
But yes, if you when they post the recorded version, the chat is typically in the description below the thing. It's not as obvious as I think it could be, but that's where it is.
Thank you, Wally. So does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring to the group? Any questions, suggestions, tips, tricks?
I had a question. I think I asked it before, but I forgot what everyone told me. The organization code in 040 subfield A, is that required, or can you just make up your own one? Or, of course, you should normally use the the Library of Congress one, but there was a question asked ages ago on a mailing list, and I didn't answer it. So
My experience is, first of all, you can make it up because it's koha, and second, you can also make it not required, which may be easier. Oh,
yeah.
and Heather, you might want to close your ears. You can also make up your own mark field. Let's say you want a 503 for some reason. You can add it. You can make one. It won't be standard. It will be you will make a mess when you put it in another system, but you can if you want to.
So yes, you can do anything you want. Yes, I am reaching for my pearls. I'm clutching my metaphorical pearls here. The thing about making something up is that maybe in the moment you're like, I don't share my records with anybody, but in the future you might want to. So if your record finds its way to a system, a shared system like OCLC, Sky River, something like that. Thank you, Esther, for the link to the MARC organization codes. You may want an official MARC organization code. Any library can get one. And that's what you generally put in the 040 or in, say, that subfield 5 that I was mentioning for 500s for institution to which it applies.
Thanks, everyone. That helps a little bit.
I believe it doesn't cost to get a code. Is that right, Heather? I think you just apply. Yeah.
I think so. It's been eons since I have done.
I think
I just am looking at the page and it doesn't look like that there's any fee associated with it. So it doesn't
depending
hurt
on
to get one. Yeah.
depending on what country you're in, there's different agencies
Okay.
that issue those codes too.
Okay.
Yes, very good point. And they are unique. The ones in the US are different from OCLC codes. I'll point out too. So, for example, our records have either both in the 040. Sometimes it's our OCLC code because that's what's used in OCLC UDU. Sometimes, depending on how the record originated, it gets our MARC organization code CSFMM. But again, you can put anything you want in there. I recommend using it because the 040 subfield A is the cataloging agency. Subfield C is the transcribing agency for an original record. It's going to be the same in both. it could be different because say you've got an old catalog card and you can't find the record anywhere and you're typing it in. So that catalog card came from OCLC. The 040 subfield A is going to be DLC and the subfield C is going to be U. And they're handy because it can come up like what was the record source, especially if you do something like an OCLC reclamation project, which is reconciling your local catalog with OCLC master records and holdings. And then you can use those 040s for decisions based on which record or which records data you want to keep, or if you're merging records in the future.
Can I ask
Anybody?
can I ask a really quick stupid question?
There are no stupid questions. Ask
All right.
away, Wally.
All right. I put in a ticket for this, but there are parts of my MARC records that I can't see. For instance, I pulled up just a sample of ours right then, looking at the 040, and there is no 040. Wait a minute, hold on. No, I lied. Never mind. I told you it was stupid.
It's not stupid, and it touches on a point that is unique to Koha that we should mention, that you have the power to set the visibility of fields in the OPAC or in the staff client, and these are set in the MARC frameworks. And MARC frameworks is a thing that Koha does. There's a default framework. Then you can have different frameworks for different things like an archives record or a sound recording, and you can put defaults in these or not. We just always use, in my library, we always use the default record. But that's a typical place to look if you're not seeing a particular field. And you're nodding, Wally. I think you probably already checked these and it's a mystery.
So you can specify how what tab the editor of the field is managed in. If you set it to ignore, it won't keep any records. Let's say you set 245 to ignore. Even if you upload a title, it won't be there. So that can be kind of dangerous. Just make sure you know what you're doing before you set to ignore.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of years ago, we added, or Carolyn added a warning message to that to be quite explicit. There's another bug there to try and address the how do you change it properly so that people don't accidentally remove things. But anyway, there's a warning message there about that.
Actually, it might be easier to just change it so it keeps the information. It just doesn't display it in the tab. I don't know
Yeah,
how
but
easy that would be, but to do.
yeah, you just change the visibility. So I think, from memory, but yeah, and the other bit to remember is that if there's changes made to the default framework, anyway, when you do upgrades, you don't get those. You have to manually, from when you implement Koha, you have to manually make any of the changes that are made subsequent to the framework, default framework. So yeah, and then there is a bug in it. There was quite a bit of interest for a while, but people have got busy, I guess, about how can we make it easier to upgrade default framework rather than just a note in the release notes. So anyway.
So there's been a discussion in the chat of, is the framework similar to constant data? And yes, there's a very people are saying yes, but people are saying also kind of, and everybody's right. You can, when you're importing records, you can apply MARC modification templates. That can kind of add and append data. I don't do it. Other people do it. I'm more into the advanced bib editor macros. So I've gone to importing my records from OCLC via the Z3950, and then I save it immediately, and then it can be opened in the advanced bib editor and you can apply macros. And that's sort of the way the constant data, I've adapted the constant data function of OCLC connection to my cataloging. Oh, yes, and the macros can be set at the individual user level, yes. Oh, framework update accessibility for existing installations is a bug that's mentioned. Krista, since you're new and others who are new, I'm going to mention that that bugs are what in the Koha community we call like fixing actual bugs, but also developments. And anybody can get an account, and I recommend that you do, to the Koha Bugzilla, because then you can comment on the bugs, the developments, etc., and let the developers know what we as users would actually like to see. And then you can get into testing them, which is really fun. And then if you test them and sign off on them, you get your name in the release notes, which never gets old.
Yes, Koha's user driven, so we get what we want instead of what the developers at the company think we want, which is kind of refreshing.
Not that the developers don't have fabulous ideas. They do.
Yes, they do.
So
and they are very responsive.
They are. We have a couple more minutes if there's anything else.
I just had a quick question on the line of the bugs and commenting and all of that. So before they updated Bugzilla, there was the feature where you could vote on bugs. And that's been taken away, it seems. Does anybody know what happened to that?
I think it just wasn't really used or paid attention to. So just comment. Add yourself to the CCs because that shows a lot of interest, and comment. Even if your comment is just like, wow, I love this, comment.
Yeah, I was told that the voting wasn't paid attention to, that you needed to comment. And like Heather said, just put in, this is great or something. And that was counted as a vote, if you want to call it such. They saw that before they saw the votes.
And I've even put in too, like if it seems interesting but I don't understand it, I'll put in a comment saying, can somebody translate this from developer to librarian? And they will. Everyone who's in Bugzilla is so kind and so nice and so patient. And also I'd say, don't be afraid to put in a bug because someone's going to see it. They'll correct any mistakes you've made. And if it's a duplicate and you had no idea, they'll mark it as a duplicate and refer to the actual bug. So you really can't make a mistake in Bugzilla. Koha community, we don't bite. It's true, Fred.
Yeah. One thing to remember, sometimes there's lots of people English isn't their first language from around the world. So sometimes things can appear a bit terse, but sometimes that's just developers. Sometimes it's just the language, language barriers. So yeah, sometimes developers have got a bit, or people have got a bit grumpy as well. So we're all human.
Right. We all have our days. And even those of us whose English is a first language, we all speak different Englishes, and we are all separated by our common language sometimes. Well, it's the top of the hour. I want to thank you all for joining. This was a really great great session. I learned a lot. Do check out the Consortia Special Interest Group if you all are interested. And I think that group's probably interesting too for even single libraries that have a bunch of branches or are single libraries but would like to see what those features do. If they could be interesting. Our next meeting is going to be May 1st, same time, and I'm going to be retired, so I may be looking much more calm. Transitioning to a volunteer in the Koha community. So thank you all.